for us this morning, so he's ready for his breakfast.
Oh my goodness, hello big boy.
So this is Flash.
Hi Flash, I've heard all about you. Such a beautiful baby.
We're going to feed him his breakfast here.
He's a three-toed sloth.
He's a two-toed,
oh,
so it can be confusing because I know you see three on his back feet. But all sloths actually have three toes on their back feet, and it's the front feet where they differ. So he is considered a two-toed sloth.
I apologize for mistaking you for a three.
Yeah, but it makes more sense to say two-fingered sloth than it does two-toed, because then a lot of people think that, you know, we're referring to their back feet. But it is their front where
that makes sense though. Hello, big boy.
So all of this that's in this bowl is for him. He can have any of it. Sometimes he's picky, which, I mean, I guess you would be too if you got hand-fed your food every day.
That's true.
But you just give it to him right at about that angle, and you gotta let him sniff it and figure out if that's what he wants.
Should I pick it up?
And just leave it, yeah,
okay.
if it falls, then.
Now, is that home?
That's home for Zoe. We'll get to her here in just a minute,
okay.
but Flash's enclosure is in there. So we'll see. I don't know if he's not into sweet potato this morning or what. Usually green beans are his forte.
He says, I don't know this stranger danger. Yeah.
But you can offer him any of that, and if he's not interested here in a few minutes, I'll break out the good stuff.
If you don't need these, I will. Are you interested in that? Huh?
There we go, bud.
Is it because of I'm a stranger and you're going to be kind? Is that what you're doing? Look at you. Look at you.
So Flash is about 7 years old. He's almost 7. We've had him for about 3 years, or a little over three now. And so he was already, you know, a little over 3 when we got him. So when we first got him, we got him from a facility where he was basically just observation beforehand. He was never interacted with like this, real close. And you can also pet him real slow down the middle of his back to see how soft he is. Whereas beforehand, when we first got him, he wasn't comfortable with that at all. He had never had that experience before. But slowly after, you know, he gained that trust and everything with us, then he would come down and he started to develop his routine where he'd be coming down for his breakfast at the same time every morning.
Hello. Hello. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I get involved.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
He's a pretty boy. Oh, shush.
But it started, they're very routine animals, and so they like to develop their routine, they like to stick to it. So it kind of started to get routine for him that every morning around 9:30 we'd start chopping up his breakfast, chopping up everybody else's breakfast, and so he knew shortly after that we were going to be coming in there and giving it to him. And so he started to develop where, you know, he'd start to hear that down here, he'd slowly start to come down, and sometimes he would beat us before we ever even got in there to give him his breakfast. So then he'd get really impatient and start kind of pecking at that glass and wanting us to open up that door so we'd come in and give him his breakfast, which is when we built this branch out here for him to be able to climb onto and just hang out here while he's waiting for his breakfast. And so then that's what time we started doing his encounters. So he based his encounters around what time he wanted to encounter. And so he only has, if he was fully booked for the day, he would only have an encounter from 10 to 10:30 and then 10:30 to 11, and that's it. So he only encounters for an hour total. The rest of the day he kind of comes and goes as he pleases, especially if we're in here doing another encounter with another sloth. Sometimes he'll come down and be interested because we may have food for him. But for the most part, the only strict schedule that he sticks to is first thing in the morning when we know he's coming down for his breakfast. So that's when we started doing his encounters.
You know his personality, I love it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they all do have their own different personalities as well. Even just the difference between Zoe and Dash. Dash is our baby sloth. He's about 10 months old now.
Oh my goodness.
They both came from the same facility. They were raised the exact same way. They went through the same conditioning. They have different bloodlines, but they came from the exact same place. But they both have totally different personalities, and it's funny to watch the differences between them. Now Flash is a totally different creature as well because he did not come from the same breeding facility. He was still born and raised in captivity, but he came up north from like Michigan or somewhere like that. Whereas Zoe and Dash were more local, but not in Tennessee. But where we got Zoe and Dash from is basically the #1 breeder or supplier of sloths to all of the zoos and organizations in like the east of the U.S. But Flash did not have the same type of conditioning that Zoe did. So Zoe was conditioned from a very young age, just a few days old, to starting to interact with people even before she was weaned from her mother, which is why she's a holding sloth. So she went through that conditioning every day until she was weaned, and then after she was weaned, she just kind of went from mom being her source of comfort to then humans being her source of comfort. And so it was always something that was just natural for her, and that's why we're able to hold her. Now, Flash did not have that same type of conditioning. Before we got him, he was basically just observation. So he has never offered to climb onto any of us, and if he ever decides to, be interested in something like that, that would be completely his decision. Even though he was born and raised in captivity and is comfortable with being around people, it would be a completely different experience for him if we were to try to pick him up and hold him.
Did they not do as much holding of him?
They never held him. So they're raised completely different ways. Even the place that we got Zoe from, he has a different breeding program where he has sloths that he raises that are comfortable with being around people, but not comfortable with being held. So naturally, sloths are not, people think of sloths as really gentle, docile, calm animals, and they are as long as they're left alone. But if you were to go out, and even if I were to try to get Flash down off of that branch and hold him when he has never had that experience before, he would be extremely stressed, trying to get away, trying any which way to get away from me, because he's never had that done before. Now Zoe has had that done since she was maybe 4 or 5 days old, and so it was always, it was a conditioning, whereas the mothers were clicker trained. They knew that when she heard that clicker noise, the breeder was going to come up and give her a treat and then borrow that baby for just like 10 or 15 seconds while still standing right next to mom. So mom's never stressed out, therefore baby's never stressed out, and it's always a positive interaction that that baby has with people.
No. It's okay, buddy.
Where it just becomes normal for them. Whereas Flash didn't have that. And so it would essentially be the difference with holding Zoe and trying to hold a sloth that had never had a human interaction like that before. It would essentially be the difference between holding a house cat and a feral cat.
Oh,
You'd probably walk
that
away
makes
from that
sense.
looking quite differently.
That's a good scenario there.
Yeah. And even with Flash, he is comfortable with being around us. He trusts us and everything, but the sensation of being down off of a branch, not in that position anymore, and holding onto a person like how we'll do with Zoe, is not something that he has ever had done and would not be comfortable with doing.
So how does he go back in his pen? How do you do
He
that?
hooks onto the door frame right there. He'll come over to this side of the branch. We'll open up the door. He hooks onto the door frame and goes in.
Does he let you know when he's ready to go back?
He does, yeah. Sometimes if he gets his belly full before the end of the encounter, he'll lower down by just holding on to his 2 back feet and start kind of pecking at the glass like, open please.
I know what that's for. So if he's 7, how long have you had him?
We've had him a little over 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's come a long way, it sounds
yeah.
like.
Yeah, the first 2 years that we first had him, even the facility that we have here has come a long way. So the first 2 years that we had Flash, there were 3 employees, 2 of which being the owners. And so it was a lot smaller at that point. And so John was the one that did the kangaroo encounter with you, was his primary caregiver. He was the only one that ever really went in there, worked with him, talked to him, and got him really used to being around people. And so for that reason, John is his favorite person. If he's having a slow morning where his enclosure goes up 20 feet, and if he's in the top of that 20-foot enclosure and is, just wanting a nap and not really wanting to come down, is not hungry, not wanting his breakfast, all I'll have to do is go get John, and John will just step in there and start talking to him, and he comes down pretty quickly for him, just because he does have that bond with him.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So they do all kind of pick their people. Zoe was the same way. When we first got her, she was our first holding sloth. We had Flash first, but we don't hold him. And so she wanted to be held all the time. To be able to be an ambassador sloth, which is what she is, they do have to meet 2 requirements. They have to genuinely enjoy and actively seek human interaction. So even after we're done holding Zoe and I go to put her back in there, she's not having it. She's climbing back through the branches at me, trying to get me to pick her back up, because that's where she enjoys being. And so when they first got her, our young baby animals stay up at the main house for a while until they start to get older. So for the first year of the sloth's life, they do stay at the main house, minus Flash. She was already adult when we got him. But Zoe was up at the main house, and so Donna held her all the time just because that's what she wanted to do. She wanted, someone to be holding her. And so she got so attached to Donna that Donna can't really come down here and do encounters with her anymore, because if she's in the same room as Zoe and someone else is holding Zoe and she's hearing Donna's voice, all she's trying to do is just get to Donna.
That's her person.
Exactly, yeah. So they do all kind of pick their people that they do enjoy being around.
About what does he weigh?
He's about 16 pounds. That could be a little bit different now, and it does fluctuate a lot because they only go to the bathroom once a week. So really build up their weight, and then right after they go, they can go down, like they can lose about a third of their body weight.
Wow.
So it does fluctuate a lot. On average, the last time we weighed him, he was about 15, 16 pounds. But since we don't hold Flash, it's difficult to weigh him. And so, yeah, it's difficult to get an updated weight on him. Whereas Zoe, we can weigh her, every week or more than that.
Do the males have any responsibilities when the female has babies?
No.
No.
Yeah. No, so the only time that the daddy sloth would probably never even see that baby unless it was just happenstance across, seeing him in the rainforest. But no, after they mate, the male will leave, go back to the tree that he was staying in beforehand, and then that female will give birth and have that baby and then care for it.
Are they an animal that mates for life?
No.
Okay.
No, once the females go into heat, they actually will let out a really loud screech sound that sounds like a D sharp if you're into music, so it's really high pitched. They'll periodically let that out, and all of the males in the area will slowly start to move towards her, and the first male that gets there will be the lucky winner that gets to make her, and all of the other males that show up late will just turn around and go back where they came from, because they don't really fight for mates like a lot of other mammals do. And then after that deed is very slowly done, then the male will just leave and go back to the tree that he came from. So they do kind of pick. In the wild, they eat the leaves of the sarcopia trees, and there's a few different species, genres.
Say the tree name again.
Sarcopia.
Sarcopia.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a few different types of those, and they all taste a little bit different, and so they do kind of pick their favorite ones. Now, in general, sloths do like the smaller, more fresh, like baby leaves that are starting to grow. That's on all of the trees, but they do kind of pick their favorite type, and they'll pick that tree. They'll stay in that tree for a long time. And then if that tree starts to not do so well, then they'll move to a different tree. But for the most part, they stay in that same tree. A lot of times, even if a baby is born in one tree, they may stay in that tree the rest of their lives, especially if it's a female. They do tend to, stay in the same spot. They don't have a whole lot of energy reserves to just be moving around and, exploring. So the leaves that they eat are extremely low in caloric content, and it takes calories in order to create ATP. So for that reason, they don't really have enough energy to be, just moving and exploring. So ATP is just their energy source.
Okay.
Yeah, it's everybody's energy source. So a series of metabolic processes to be able to make that in your body, but then that's basically just, I'm using ATP or energy to just be able to go like that. So that's why a lot of people wonder how sloths are able to just hang like that for so long, because you think that that's pretty tiring for him, because it is for us. If I were to try to hold on to that branch and have all of my body weight suspended from that, that'd be difficult, because I'm using energy to close my fists and to do that. I'm using muscles to do that. But for them, all of the muscles and ligaments and tendons that are in their forearms are so tight that snap down around the branch like that is just natural for them. That's the relaxed state. So for them, what actually is more difficult and more strenuous to be able to do is to straighten that claw out and reach for the next branch. So that's why when he's hanging there, not moving, not doing anything at all, he is expending no energy whatsoever, even though he's holding on to that branch. And for that reason, if he were to actually pass away in that position, holding on to that branch, they would hang there until something either rotted or something knocked them out of the tree, because that's just relaxed for them. Whereas for us, this is our relaxed state. I'm not using any energy to have my hands open. So if I'm sedated or when I pass, I don't all of a sudden tense up. And it's the same for them. This is relaxed, so they don't tense up and straighten those claws. So it's really interesting the way that their body works to be able to conserve as much energy as possible.
Well, Flash, you're a handsome dude. Yes, you're a handsome dude. Yeah, such a good boy.
And you can cycle through any of these. Sometimes I have even offered him one end of a veggie. He sniffed it and is like, no, I'm not having it. And then I act like I give him another piece and I actually just turn the veggie around and he'll take that one. So he's just really finicky sometimes with what he picks.
And maybe he's just, what about this? You interested in that? I know you're sniffing it, but you're not sure about it. You don't want it? You're not interested? It's okay. It's okay. Would you like to try something else? I talk to animals, so that way I. Back to the green bean. Let's see where we go with this. Are you thinking? Are you thinking she's got something? I'm not sure what I want yet. About this one. You like your green beans, aren't you? I'm with you, buddy. I don't blame you. Yeah.
you can see those leather paw pads that he has there on the underside. Those are actually really sensitive. That's what allows them to know what they're grabbing onto.
Are you
I'll show
thinking that?
you his trick.
Oh, what is this? What's he doing?
He's just trying to get you to give him more veggies. When they're reaching out like that, people think that they're trying to grab a hold of the veggie, but while they can, the slivers that we have here are pretty thin and small, so it's pretty difficult for them to manipulate that. But when they're reaching out like that, that's usually how they will pull branches towards them in the wild. They'll pull the whole branch, and then they'll eat the leaves that are on that branch, and so that's why he reaches out and goes like that.
That was pretty cool to see that.
What do you think, bud?
Where are you going?
We'll see if he's about to do it. I told you, they're very routine animals. And so the only place that he ever will scratch himself is over here. He has never, ever, ever scratched an itch on this side of the branch. He will go all the way to the end, even if he's in the middle of eating and is like actively, being hungry, he will stop eating, go to the very, very end of that branch, and a lot of times what he'll do is he'll still be holding on by a back foot and a front foot, and he'll reach, have this one stretched all the way out and reach and be scratching his back in some way. And then after he's done scratching, he'll come back to this branch and then start eating again.
Oh my goodness.
So they're they really do like to stick to a schedule. And even if it's, oh, I have an itch, I have to go over here to scratch it. I don't.
That's
what
his
he
way.
does.
That's what I'm talking about. I know you're talking about me.
We'll see if I can break out a little bit of incentive here. Gets this mixture of brown rice with sweet potatoes and stuff in it.
Oh, I love how you're turning. Thank you. I appreciate that. I do. Such a pretty boy. I'm sorry, you're handsome, not pretty. Are you wanting something?
So sloths do have really poor eyesight, and because of that, their other senses tend to be a little bit heightened. So since he can't really see very well, their sense of smell and
He
their
must
sense of
know
hearing.
what you're doing.
He heard me open up that fridge, and he probably can already smell this.
I love it.
So he really does like this rice mixture. He doesn't necessarily need it. All of his nutritional needs are met with the other foods that we feed him. But this is just something a little bit extra that we give him sometimes as a reward or a treat.
Just like a dog, his nose is on full alert.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty boy. I'm sorry, handsome. You're a handsome one. You are.
But they do have a condition in their eyes. It's called broad monochromacy.
No, you're waiting for that. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. It's good
Yeah, when I
stuff.
break out this stuff, it's all over for the
It's good stuff.
But they do have a condition that's called broad monochromacy, and that means that they only have broad cells in the eyes and no cone cells. So we have cone cells in the back of our eyes that allow us to see color, as well as rod cells that pick up motion. But they only have the rod cells, and so they are colorblind, but they pick up motion really well. So something as simple as this for us is a lot more enhanced and can be a lot more scary for them. That's why movements and everything. Anything moving towards or by a sloth in the wild is bad news for that sloth, and they just want to get away from it. So their kind of first line of defense is to just get to the very end of that branch, away from whatever it is that could potentially be coming towards them as quickly as they can.
What are their predators?
So the natural things that could be after them in the wild, the number one successful thing that gets a hold of sloths are the harpy eagles, because they can spot the sloths a lot easier, because they tend to stay up at the very tops of those cercophia trees, and those can go up like 100+ feet in the air. They're massive trees. They tend to stay up at the very top, on the very end of those branches, because those are where the most fresh leaves are growing, or the newest leaves. But the eagle can snatch, just grab hold of the leg and just rip that sloth right off the
Would they
branch.
bother one of this size?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Really?
harpy eagle, their wingspan is massive. They are a very, very big bird.
Like the condor, something like that, or?
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, I know they're huge.
Yeah. Yeah, they're a really, really big bird. And their, talons, we already kind of talked about how the locking mechanisms work in his forearms and those claws, how he's able to hold like that. So pulling down, if I was to grab his leg and pull down, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get him down off of that branch than it would be to lift up off of the branch. So
Okay.
their claws are kind of like coat hangers. or, you know, if you lift off well enough, you can get them off easier. So if an eagle swoops in and just grabs the hold of the leg and rips off, they're coming off that branch pretty quick. But some other things that are dangerous for sloths are jaguars and ocelots.
Wow.
Those can, if there's one that's up in the tops of the trees, and you can hold this little dish for him and feed him out of this dish here. They, you know, if they're daring enough to go out on the end of that limb after that sloth, then they can get hold of a sloth like that.